On behalf of the Department of International Business and Academy of International Business, US Northeast Chapter, let me welcome you to this Symposium on China. We are going to have a panel discussion this afternoon. We had a very interesting session this morning on the relationship between China and the West, and we had our first panel discussion this morning. This afternoon, we have 4 panelists among us. We have Professor Jiayong Frank Gao from Tianjin Foreign Studies University. He's going to talk about success and failures of business in China. We have Professor Mingke from Beijing Technology and Business University. He's going to talk about environmental challenges in China and what it means for the world. We have Professor Ben Liu. He's a professor of marketing at Quinnipiac University, and he's going to talk about China's relationship with its neighbors. And finally, we have Professor Tse-Shyang Chen, professor of law at Quinnipiac University, and he's going to talk about the rise of China. His title is Resurgent China with Chinese Characteristics, a Confucian View. And this panel discussion will be facilitated by our good friend, David Ives. So let me turn the mic to our moderator, David Ives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. I'm the executive director of the Albert Schweitzer Institute here at Quinnipiac. The first thing I want to do is make sure everybody understands how much work this is and that Mohammed has done a whole lot of the work to get this whole conference together. And I think we should thank Mohammed for all his work, if you don't mind. Albert Schweitzer was a Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 1952, and we're happy to be a part of anything that the School of Business does. Faculty are talented and top-notch. The Schweitzer Institute is very interested in entrepreneurship as a possible path to the elimination of poverty and also towards peace. I want to emphasize that when we get to the Q&A part of the presentation, that we want questions, not statements. So please don't make speeches, just make your questions short and concise. And remember to the panelists, I'm going to be holding you to about 10 minutes each, so that we can have plenty of time for questions.
No, did you tell us 1 hour each?
1 hour.
No.
We'll see you later. Okay, first of all, Frank Gao is a professor and chair of the Department of International Business at Tianjin Foreign Studies University in China. He is currently a visiting professor at Quinnipiac University, Connecticut, here in Connecticut. He obtained his master's in finance and Ph.D. in management from Mingke University in China. Prior to joining academia, Dr. Gao worked in the International Finance Department of the Chinese Education Commission. His primary research focus is green entrepreneurship and e-commerce. He has published in a number of journals and has authored several books on various aspects of management that were published in China. Professor He Mingke is a professor of business at the Beijing Technology and Business University of China. He's also director of its international office and is also vice president of the China Federation of Logistics and Purchasing. He's the vice chairman of China Society for Logistics, deputy director of the Supervisory Committee for Higher Logistics Education of the Ministry of Education of China. He has received a very prestigious award called the Hans Ovelgun Purchasing Research Award. Professor He's research interests include supply chain logistics management, logistics system theory, distribution network analysis and planning, electronic commerce and its distribution. He has published more than 100 papers and 12 books. One of his books with several national awards is well-received monographic book, Logistics System Study. As a team leader, he completed 2 projects sponsored by the World Trade Organization and related organizations. He's done 6 nation-level research projects and more than 30 other projects. Professor He was visiting professor of Gothenburg University of Sweden in 2002 through 2007, and he also worked in the UK for a brief period. Ben Liu is a professor of marketing here at QU. He holds his Ph.D. from the State University of New York at Buffalo. He was assistant professor at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign in 1991 to 1999. He's a visiting professor of Olin Business School, Washington University in St. Louis from 1999 to 2000. and Associate Professor of Marketing at Butler University from 2000 to 2007. Ben is a visiting professor of marketing to various MBA and EMBA programs in China, Denmark, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan. His major research interest is in the areas of service marketing, cross-cultural negotiation, and new product development. He's on the editorial board of the Journal of Service Research. Professor Frederick Tse-Shyang, I was going to practice that more. Tse-Shyang Chen joined the QU School of Law faculty in 1978. He teaches contracts, commercial law, international human rights, law of the sea, international trade, international business transactions, secured transactions, real estate transactions, and Chinese law. He's been a visiting faculty member at Drake, the National Tsinghua University in Taipei, Taiwan, in Beijing, and in Japan, and was the dean of the law school at Soochow University in Taipei. He has served as advisor to the Republic of China's Ministry of Finance and to the monetary section of the Republic's ad hoc Council on Economic Renovation. Professor Chen's research focuses on international law and contract law. His article, The Iraq War Hegemony in International Law, was published in the Japanese comparative law journal Hukakuho Saoshi in 2005. He is the faculty advisor to Quinnipiac's International Law Society and the Asian Pacific American Law Student Association. He enjoys classical music and travel. Won't you join me in welcoming the panelists?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very privileged to give an introduction about the success and the failure of American companies in China. First of all, let's look at I'd like to show you the growth of, those are the growth of American companies in China. You can see that this is the international trade between China and the United States. 30 years ago, the trade volume was 1 billion, and last year is 500 billion. So you can see 30 times increase of the international trade between China and the United States over the past 30 years. And there's still huge potential between China and the United States. And next, let's see the companies, direct investment of companies in China by American companies. And you can see now there are over 60,000 American companies in China, and compared with only 40,000 American companies 10 years ago. So actually, all those illustrates the growth, the steady growth of American companies in China. However, some companies are very successful, some companies encounter the failure in China market. I'd like to show you some companies of successful companies in China. For example, this is GM, General Motors. General Motors sold about 2.2 million cars just 1 year in China. It's great successful, one of the successful motor makers in China. Another company I'd like to introduce is this is the plant of General Motors in Shanghai. And next company, yes, this is assembly line of the General Motors. And the next, yes, this is a Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola came to my hometown about 20 years ago, and over the past 20 years, there's a huge growth of Coca-Cola in China. For example, it's about, by the end of 2012, the total investment of Coca-Cola Tianjin subsidiary has reached $5 billion US. And the next company, yes, there's over 30 subsidiaries of Coca-Cola in China. And the next is Motorola. Motorola is now it's established in my hometown Tianjin, where I come from. It's about 120 kilometers away from Beijing. And totally Motorola has make investment about 10 billion US dollars in China. Anyway, yes, Walmart is very successful and established 390 outlets in over 150 cities in China and employed 100,000 workers across China. Anyway, some companies encountered failure in China. For example, do you know Home Depot? Home Depot came to China 10 years ago and withdrew from Chinese market. This is a great pity. And now, do you know Nokia? IKEA. IKEA is a furniture company provider from Sweden, right? Now, IKEA is making progress, and IKEA has established 2 outlets in Beijing, and is already established one in Tianjin. Is going to establish more outlets in big cities along the coastal cities. Do you know eBay? eBay, this platform, e-commerce platform, occupied 90% of market share in China 10 years ago. Now its market share has shrunk to 10%. 10%. And it's very interesting if we look at the success and failure of American companies in China, and it's also a very interesting phenomenon for us to observe that some companies which really operate well in the United States, but doesn't operate well in China. Some companies, they has no competitiveness relatively in the United States, but are more successful in China. For example, it's very interesting. I noticed this phenomenon since I arrived here 3 months ago. And 3 months ago, I went to the McDonald's. Is very interesting. I want to find KFC. Do you know how many KFC in China? Now 5,000. 5,000 shops, franchised shops in China. Do you know how many McDonald's? Only 1,400. So, but to my surprise, that I found more McDonald's than KFC. So it's very interesting because according to my impression and understanding, KFC should be more successful than McDonald's in the United States. And then 3 weeks ago, finally I found a KFC. It's so difficult for me to find a KFC in the United States. And to my totally surprise, the KFC here is completely different from that in China. So I make a comparison with the KFC in the States and KFC in China. I find that there are many differences. So from this case, it reflects that why some companies are successful, why some American companies fail in China market. First, I think is culture. Culture really is really important. Yes, we should have a global mentality. However, when we operate, we must cater for the individual needs of the local market. And let's look at the slogan of McDonald's. That is really not welcomed by Chinese. The McDonald's slogan is, "I'm loving it." You know, in East Asian countries, people never say I. People always say we. When you say I, that means you put individual interest before the collective interest. That's not the philosophy of East Asia, not the philosophy of China, not the philosophy of Japan and Korea. And the second is about the products. You can find exactly same products, the variety of products at McDonald's in the United States as in China, but KFC had made some very wise and clever adjustment to the local taste. Because Chinese people love rice, love pancake, right, and even the Mingke juice, and porridge. They are all the innovative products provided by the KFC in China. And the third reason I think is the common mistakes by the failed American companies. I think they should empower, delegate the Chinese employees. Why? Because they have a better understanding of the local culture. They really understand the need of the local market. And the fourth one is, I think, is short-term view. Actually, American investment in China experienced ups and downs. You know, in 1998, when the downturn of American economy, some American companies just withdraw their subsidiaries from Chinese market. Actually, I don't think that's a wise move. You know, China is a big market. You cannot. Some companies, American companies, just withdraw and enter and withdraw again. I think they should have a long-term view in China. And the last reason in my view for the American companies' failure in China is they really underestimated the potential competitors. For example, eBay. You know, 10 years ago, eBay already gained the first mover advantage. And they have 90% of the market share, and they already gained the advantage of what we call as the economies of scale. However, they really undervalue a guy who graduated from he's a Chinese and studied in the United States and returned China and start his own business. And now that company already occupied 90% of market share in China. So I think American companies really shouldn't. They should have a dynamic view on the potential competitors. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's what I'm talking about. The American business.
Thank you for keeping on time. Very good models.
Thank you very much. Once again, I will present something. The topic is about environmental challenges in China and what it means for the world. Firstly, I think that if we say the environment, we have two different kinds of views. The first view, for example, for China, we see the environment from the history axis. So that's a history-wide. In the last 30 years, we would say Chinese environment, we have changed a lot. Okay. And we are not satisfied with our environment, but history we think that something improved, but a lot of new problems arise. Second view is that we can compare country against each other, right? So that's nationwide. And China now is in its infancy. I think we are still in developing status. Second thing, why China's environment is like that, I would like to introduce something about that. As you know that in 1978, China started to open to the outside world. Before that, China's economy is very poor, right? It's very weak, and the scale is very small, and the environment is not a vital problem to the world. From 1978 till to 2001. 2001 is the year China access to WTO. And then we have a promise. Okay, so that whole years, from 1978 to 2001, China developed its economy very fast. But only in that period, Chinese environment is heavily polluted. heavily damaged, I think. From 2001 to present, I think China now realizes that environment is a big problem. It's one of the biggest problems now, and started to take a lot of actions. Okay, so this is second thing. Third thing is that now we have a lot of challenges in terms of environment. I would like to describe from three perspectives. One, land. You know, China has large land, right? And geographically distributed differently. And now, generally speaking, I think we have a lot of land with very dry seasons. For example, in southern China, in Yunnan province and Guizhou province, and sometimes Sichuan province, every year we lack of rain. Okay, in some years there is no rain, and it's a very serious problem aroused that even farmers cannot survive. Okay, they need to rely on the water pipe from outside. So this I don't think, what's the reason for that? A lot of people explain the reason. Okay, a lot of people blame for the building of Three Gorges Dam. You know, the Three Gorges Dam blocked the Yangtze River. Okay, that's the biggest river, biggest dam in the world. But some people say, especially say, no, it's not a reason. It's the global circulation of the weather, of the rain. We don't know that. So another thing is that in terms of land, every year we have a lot of earthquake. We have a lot of flood, and our soil, because of the chemical fertilizers used, intensive use of that in order to improve our output of grains. So there are some problems. So now there are a lot of efforts will be put for the improvement of land. The government pay more attention to that. So this is the first thing. The second is for water. In terms of environment, water is very important, right? Because every people rely on water in order to survive, to live. In China, in last 30 years, in the development of economy, our waters, to some extent, damaged. In some areas, I think that is serious damage. One thing is that almost every cities in northern China, we have a serious shortage of water. So now Chinese central government, we have huge projects to pipe the water from Yangtze River in the south to Beijing, Tianjin, and other big cities, even to the coastal cities like Qingdao and Yantai. Another thing is that our water has been damaged by industrial discharge. It's chemical pollution. In some areas, very serious, and every year the government have some cases to be punished in recent few years. Third one is the air. I think that everyone present you may know the haze weather recent few days in Beijing, right? Yeah, you guys know that, right? Yeah, raise your question, then I am ready for that. So the Chinese air, in Beijing, in Shanghai, is terrible, I would say, especially in winter season, because we have a system to provide a suitable temperature by coal. You know, we have larger population, so it's a big problem. But I would say that in the last 30 years, the government take a lot of steps, okay, to use electricity and to use gas. The gas is piped also from western land. Other things. So this is air. So air is the reason for that. For the air problem is also I think that you need to know we have a large population. Every year increase too many people. And people need to live. And their life rely on energy. The energy consumption is a serious discharge. And you know, we have a large number of cars in every city. I would say that people don't believe we have too many cars in such a short time. Okay, even every big manufacturer or automobile manufacturer in the world, they have their factories in China, and they sell their cars in China. We are very glad to hear news that Americans want to take the factory back to the United States. That's very good. That's very good news maybe to China, because to make a car, the pollution is a result. Okay, you need to use a lot of energy, and the consumption is a natural result. What it means about this? 3 points. The third point is that now the global is one family, right? So the air is flowing from one country to another country. So every country in the world, in the globe, we share the same weather. We share the same environment, especially the macro weather, right? So we need to do something together. This is the first point. The second point is that China, now I think that environment is a bigger challenge for the development. If we develop our economy like what we have done before, then it's not sustainable, okay? Because we promised to reduce our carbon, okay, output, okay? We'll have own target. Our people need to live longer, healthier, okay? Have a better life for the government to guarantee, so we need to do a lot of things to improve our environment. Let's see that China is a big market for environmental protection, okay? That means that huge opportunities will be produced for investors, for related people to export your technology and your equipment to China. Now, actually, I think that Chinese government realized that, and we have a very open policy to cooperate with foreign investors. So this is second point. Third point, from academic side, I think that we need to do more research. Okay, to do more research, especially the research in international collaboration. Okay, so that's my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention to this topic. Thank you.
Good evening. About 10 years ago, I took two of my colleagues to visit Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. And upon our return, we made a report to our colleagues in Butler University. And this was our title, Hidden Dragon and Crouching Tiger. That was coincide with the movie by An Lee, remember? Yeah. And that was almost 10 years ago. And the three of us, including myself from Taiwan, my colleagues from Colombia, and another colleague from Iran, representing American professor visiting Asia. But barely 10 years later, China is no longer hidden dragon, right? It's obvious now. And China has been rising and recognized by the rest of the world. So I wanted to show you the map. Although most of you know what the map looks like, but there's still no harm to do so. Okay, we know this is Asia, right? And China is over here. And China used to include Mongolia. So in Taiwan, where I come from, we have this, this shape, like a leaves. Now it's like a rooster. Okay, so China surrounded by Japan, neighbored by Japan, with Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, and also this Indo-China, the peninsula's multi countries, and also Indonesia. So of course, if you extend a little bit, we have the mid Central Asian countries used to be part of the USSR, and also another big country here, India. So to talk about the relationship of China and its neighbor will take a whole day. That's why I asked for 1 hour to 4 hours, but wasn't permitted. So today I'm going to focus a little bit more on some of them, which are more like a more focal point that people actually paying attention to, because India has been the one of the BRIC countries, so should be discussed separately. Okay. With Japan, we know Japan has been much more advanced economically, and historically, China and Japan has been collaborating in many aspects. Yeah, some are positive economically, some are very negatively politically. Yeah, and with Taiwan, you all know the history of Taiwan, and I came from Taiwan. I have the first-hand feeling. So I will get to some part of this, but I will focus a little bit more on the particular economic aspects, and also focusing on China's relationship with Asian Asian nation. That's an association of Southeast Asian nation. Okay? Yeah. ASEAN. Thank you. So let me come back to my PowerPoint. So I'm going to discuss this in 3 aspects. Historically, we all know. Can someone tell us what China in Chinese language mean? For those who came from China, you are disqualified. Kingdom, middle kingdom, in the center. That's what it literally means. Yeah, if you look at its geographic location, it's very much so, right? Yeah, although you can argue, everyone look at around him or her is in the center, right? That's very centered, self-centered point of view. But China has been considered itself is in the middle of the world. That's one. Secondly, Chinese people's attitude, highlighted by or represented by Confucius culture. I just asked my colleagues, how does that mean? 中庸思想 means the mean theory, the golden mean theory, or I would say moderate, not extreme. You do things you don't want to do extreme, right? Yeah, doing things right in the middle, above middle. Okay, and all those has something to do with its relationship with the surrounding countries. Historically, we know that there have been many different significant incidents or events, but one of them just happened not too long ago during the Ming Dynasty, before Qing. That's about beginning of 15th century. The emperor dispatched a huge fleet led by Mr. Zheng He, went down to the Southeast Asia and even through the channel of Malaysia, okay, Malacca, and went into India Ocean. And because of that, China actually, the reason of that was to search for resources and also to communicate with surrounding nations, to show to them what China is. And some of them actually become collaborative with China and even willing for the submit some kind of tribute, right? Yeah, yearly. And then also we know culturally in this area there are more than 30 or 40 million of the residents living in Southeast Asian are Chinese descendant or with an ethnic background. Okay, and interesting enough is Chinese culture emphasized on peace. So recently, actually, previous President Hu, yeah, when he became president, his slogan or theme was harmony, society, right? So peaceful is very important, culture of in China, in Chinese culture. And originally, I want to show you one video clip, but no, I have only 10 minutes, so it's there was a video clip talking about actually filmed by USA, saying that what kind of people are Chinese people? Chinese people are peaceful people. Why? They invented gunpowder, but they use it for firecracker to celebrate festival, rather than us the people, narrators say us, the Western, we use it to kill, right, class? Oh, I say class. So peaceful, okay? And how about economically? Economically, we can see a few other comments about China. And I took this not from authors from China or Chinese related, but from, this report is by Wang and Morrison in 2006. That's a report for Congress in the United States. So they are talking about things from, what we know from Western. So I think in a sense it's more objectives, okay? Then in this article, I found a few quotable quotes, if you allow me. It says the relationship between China and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, transformed to be one of the increasing cooperation keywords, and collaboration, those two keywords, right? Particularly in the area of trade. And they shift the balance of the power, which means shift the balance from the Western versus Oriental, which puts in the rise of Asia in general and the rise of China in specific on the scale equivalent to the two very important things in human history, global history. One is in 17th century, that's the rise of Western Europe, particularly after the UK, right? Dutch, UK, Spain, those countries, they were able to navigate and explore, expand their power and the territory and influence. And so that's one of the significant events. Secondly is the rise of the United States at the beginning of 20th century, barely about 2 centuries ago. So this was reported by our own peoples in United States to the Congress. And similarly, they mentioned about China's relation with Southeast Asia have been described as the traditionally Confucius tribute system. I already explained a little bit just now. And in contrast with that is a more Western concept, is a sphere of influence. So from Western perspective, to do what China has been doing with its neighbor, from Western culture would be we try to influence. But from Chinese culture, they put it in other ways, search for peaceful, harmonious relationship. And then yet another source, saying China's embrace of multilateral initiatives such as 2003, they have a treaty of amity and cooperation with ASEAN, and the East Asia Summit, and the effort to forge China-ASEAN free trade rounds, advanced in November 2004, all those views as evidence of non-threatening, trade-focused or trade-oriented China. They try to create the image and actually, to do the so-called win-win. Or we can say not just bilateral, can be multilateral, right? Win-win-win solution, which is encourageable, okay? And I believe, in our culture, we also encourage that, right? Not win-lose. Then, also, China promote the Asian +3 because Asian has only Southeast Asia. So they add China, Japan, and South Korea into this. Didn't put Taiwan because Chinese government consider Taiwan part of China by default. Although I would not agree directly, but economically, that's a good integration. And yet, another interesting document showing that with regard to Asia, China seeks to promote an image of being able to handle its greater economic and strategic clout responsibly. Now, I highlight those keywords. And China wants to play a constructive role rather than destructive role in regional economic and political affairs, perhaps with a view of building a stable foundation. See? Foundation, right? Stable, constructive. All those are the keywords that we, Western peoples in the United States view them. Furthermore, I'd like to show you a few information. Originally, I have some information for the bilateral trade between China and the Asian country, which separate into import-export separately and across several different countries. but I fear that information is kind of 2005, it's kind of old. So yes, so Professor Gao helped me to identify this. And as you can see, the China's bilateral trade with India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Taiwan, all what increase over year, right? Can you see that? India 1.84 billion, right? Yeah, 43. My goodness, such a huge. Oh, no, 51. My eyes are getting aged. The 2009, because of what happened, we know. But 2010 pick up and 11 continue, right? So not only the amount, but also what? The percentage of GDP. That's important. The higher the percentage of GDP means what? The mutual dependence increase. Particularly if you look at Taiwan, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and even Korea. Can you see? That's 2-digit, right? 20 to 30%. Yeah, of the national gross domestic products. And another slide show the foreign direct investment, but I don't think that's too much different from what we see from the GDP. So I will just skip this. But all in all, I hope this data show that the China's relationship in terms of trade, economic relation with its surrounding nations, yeah, is significant and increasing. Yeah. So therefore, 4 very important points I wanted to add it on, then I will stop here. One is China has been proposing to build a high-speed railroad between Southwest China and the mainland Southeast Asia. Okay, I will show you the map in a few minutes. Second one, they wanted to build the roads and the pipeline from Burma to Yunnan. That's one of the southeast and the southwest China. The third one, they proposed to actually they work on this with Thailand, okay, to build up the energy land bridge from Thailand's Gulf to China. And as you can see, many of them has to do with energy, right? Then the last one is about the ECFA agreement just about a couple years ago with Taiwan and economically. And so here, I'd like to show you using the map again to illustrate where this would happen, okay? The highway, the high-speed train would be from about here over all the way down. If they can do so, what happens from Beijing through through Guangzhou, through Guangxi over here would happen in 1 day. Actually, 12 hours, 13 hours. Okay, yeah, that's quicker than if we take plane, right? Yeah, and then the second one is about the Thailand from this Thailand Gulf building the pipeline, right, over here to supply the very important energy to China. And then Burma, those road system, it actually had that done during the World War II against war against Japan. When Japan sent the force to take over its east side of China, China has no way to do anything in and out through sea, so they had to build a strong road system through here. Okay, and with Taiwan, this is even more significant because politically has been having a lot of conflict. With all that said, there's another article, then I will stop here, okay? Really. It's another article have posted a few things that objectively those Asian countries are thinking about, right? So you can read from the title and you can read from the line I put it up here. Because with the increasing economic developments from China to those countries, they were afraid of being what? Taken over economically. And one interesting thing is this, class, I say class again. Chinese descendants has 30, 40 or even 50 millions now in Southeast Asia country. But most of them devote their effort into business work. Very few of them get into political arena, except Singapore, because Singapore has what? High percentage of the Chinese descendant ethnic population there. So that's by no choice they have to rely. Otherwise, even in Malaysia, yeah, Thailand, Indonesia, etc., you can name it. Chinese descendants seldom get into political arena, and that's good or bad. We have to judge. Okay? Yeah, that's it. Sorry, overtime, I know.
My topic is a resurgent China with Chinese characteristics, subtitle A Confucian View. I have borrowed the phrase with Chinese characteristics from the Constitution of the People's Republic of China, which proclaims the commitment of the PRC to following, quote, the road to socialism with Chinese characteristics, unquote. The word Chinese there seems to refer to Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, and the important thought of the three represents. In the title of my talk, Chinese is used to refer to Confucianism. Thus, with Chinese characteristics means with Confucian characteristics. Now, Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, and the important thought of the three represents, all are political symbols which function as the official ideology of the PRC. Confucianism is also a political symbol, but it is not an ideology of any political entity. As a Chinese symbol, however, Confucianism is far hoarier than the political symbols of the PRC. For more than 20 centuries, Confucius has been regarded as the most highly esteemed sage in China. He was acclaimed officially, quote, the highest sage and ancient teacher, unquote, and was widely respected and worshipped by the people, whether educated or not. His teachings, while exploited by the emperors to perpetuate their dynastic rule, served to check and moderate autocratic rule. Once severely criticized by Chairman Mao, Confucianism seems to have been regaining a degree of respect lately in China. Memorial ceremonies have been allowed, and the authorities have even established Confucius institutes in many parts of the world. Thus, Confucianism, too, appears to be somewhat on the resurgence. Yet, Confucianism remains no more than a utopia, but an elaboration of a resurgent China in Confucian or utopian terms need not be a futile exercise. A utopia becomes a ruling ideology upon success in effecting fundamental change in the political pattern. What then would a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics be like? It would be a champion of the way of right and not of might, with a view to achieving great harmony for all mankind. The ultimate goal of great harmony is said to be reached in successive steps. Great harmony of the world community is reached only when all the member states are well governed. A state is well governed only when all its families are well ordered. A family is well ordered only when all the individuals comprising it are well cultivated. Mencius, the second greatest sage in the history of China, said, quote, the root of the world community is in the state. The root of the state is in the family. The root of the family is in the person. Accordingly, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would first well govern itself and then secure great harmony for the entire world by practicing the way of right. I venture to offer an adumbration of such a China in broad strokes. First, such a China would observe the principle of primacy of the people. The book of historical documents and ancient Confucian classic recorded, quote, "It was the lesson of our great ancestor. The people are the root of the country. The root firm, the country is tranquil," unquote. In similar vein, Mencius said, quote, "The people are the most important element in a nation," unquote. How to accord primacy to the people then? The answer is to love what the people love and hate what the people hate. But people love so many different things that it is impossible to enumerate them all. Fortunately, the policy scientists have organized human preferences or desired events into 8 categories, which they call values. These are power, wealth, enlightenment, skill, well-being, affection, respect, and rectitude. The policy scientists also have mentioned security as a composite value. A well-governed state with Confucian characteristics would give balanced emphasis to all values people love. It would not overemphasize any to the neglect of others. Thus, it would not spend lavishly on arms, power, while the people starve well-being. Nor would it pursue undisciplined economic development, wealth, and turn a blind eye to rash depredation of the environment, well-being, affection, security, rectitude. To give primacy to the people is also to respect their wishes. Thus, if the people prefer democracy with the rule of law instead of the way of right, so be it. Secondly, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would have leaders who would practice the cultivation of their own persons. Only well-cultivated persons can order their families well, govern their states well, and ultimately bring about a world of great harmony. Well-cultivated leaders would govern their states by practicing the so-called 9 standard rules of government. I will just skip them. 9 standard rules of government taught by Confucius.
How many rules?
9.
9, good.
Standards. Well-cultivated leaders govern by making themselves examples of the governed. Once China is well-governed, it would pose itself as a template for the rest of the world and assist those other states in the practice of the way of right when asked by them. It would not impose the way of right on other states, much less invade and force it on them. Thirdly, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would seek to maintain minimum order at home and abroad. Minimum order means the pursuit of values by persuasion rather than coercion or violence. The Confucian concept of minimum order embraces 3 core ideas. First, absence of unauthorized coercion or violence. Second, authorized use of force only. Third, absence of disputes and litigation. The period during which Confucius lived in China, it's referred to as the spring and autumn period, which ranged from 771 BC to about 476 BC. That period was a period of endless wars. A study of 1001 wars covering a short span of 9 years during that time, showed 6 causes for wars. I skipped the 6 causes. Mencius regarded none of these causes as righteous because none was an authorized war. So no matter how high-sounding the causes might be. The Confucians would regard 4 types of use of force as authorized when carried out in observance of strict restraints. These are self-defense, humanitarian intervention, and the exercise of the right of revolution, and corrective expeditions. As to first first I talk about self-defense. The use of self-defense, both individual and collective, is recognized. Until great harmony prevails in the whole world, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would maintain the momentum of resurgence by continuing to retain a high value expectancy, position, and the potential for self-defense. As to humanitarian intervention, the Confucians would approve the use of force by one state against another for the protection against abusive rule in the latter, when properly carried out. A humanitarian intervention must not end up in an annexation of the territory against the will of the people involved, or in greater misery for them than before. The concept of punitive or corrective expedition denotes a correction by a higher authority against a subordinate. The states, being co-equal, are not entitled to command correction among themselves. Only the king in the olden days, or the UN today, is entitled to command a punishment. The requirements for punitive expeditions, I gather from Confucian studies, are: 1, the invasion was undertaken for a specific limited purpose, which was also a permissible purpose. 2, the actions of the expeditionary powers were properly measured and commensurate with considerations of necessity and proportionality. 3, soothing and comforting the maltreated people was the foremost on the mind of the occupying power in charge. And 4, the actions of the occupying power in charge were commensurate with the quality of its own virtue. Many have discussed the right to revolution in Confucian thinking, but it is probably more correct to refer to it as the duty to bring about a revolution. There are stringent requirements for a just revolution. I will skip them. But a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would further go beyond the rule of law and cause the people not to litigate. It would call for the disappearance of litigation, not merely the orderly conduct thereof. How is this possible? The answer is by making every individual in the realm virtuous and well cultivated. Such a person would know the difference between right and wrong. And if his claim is spurious or questionable, he will feel ashamed to advance it. Fourthly, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would seek to promote maximum order at home and abroad. The essence of maximum order is the greatest production and the widest distribution of all values. Confucius seems to think the sharing is more important than abundance. He said, "I had heard that rulers of states and chiefs of families are not troubled as much with fears of poverty as with failures to attain equal and fair distribution. For when there is equal and fair distribution, there will be no poverty. Fifth, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would uphold human rights. I will skip the elaboration. Sixthly, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would, in promoting the way of right, seek to dismantle some of the glaringly unequal institutions and doctrines that have perpetuated the way of might. These include the veto, the distinction between nuclear weapon states and other states, the weighted voting, unilateral sanctions except those officially authorized by the world community, preemptive self-defense, humanitarian intervention without prior authorization by the world community. It would respect the sovereign equality of all states and avoid interfering in the domestic jurisdictions of other states. It would loathe double standards and would find it offensive for a state with a poor human rights record to condemn other states for their violation of human rights, or to condemn some, but not all, other violators. In sum, a resurgent China with Confucian characteristics would be a well-organized, peace-loving, productive, and a strong country, fully committed to sharing and fairness in its international relations. It would offer itself as an example of ruling a country by the way of right to all other states and assist them in implementing the way of right only when asked to do so, in the interest of ultimately securing a world of great harmony. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for a few questions. Remember, no speeches, just pointed questions would be fine. And does somebody want to pass this? Mohammed, where are you?
I have a question for the last gentleman. This is concerned Confucianism. Like 500 years ago, apparently China was probably ahead of the West in development. And I was wondering, did Confucianism have anything to do with the fact that somehow China slept for 400 years or so, and the West developed? Was there a certain conservatism that maybe held back innovation?
Well, I would say probably it is one of the factors. I'm not a historian. I would say it probably is one of the factors. The Chinese people became very submissive, and in a recent article I wrote, I had to coin a term, that they suffer from the syndrome of obedientism. So you obey your parents, you obey your teachers, you obey your superiors, you obey everybody, including Professor Liu. So if you obey everybody, then unless the people are properly cultivated, educated, then that have a tendency of making the people, reliant on the opinion of others. And that is why when Sun Yat-sen, led the revolution of 1911 in China, he conceived the need to install a period of tutelage just to train the Chinese people to become the masters of their own country.
Other questions?
This is for Professor Gao. I recognize it's difficult to generalize, but if you were to take a look at market entry strategies of American companies entering China over the years, have you seen a pattern change as to the type and strategy for market entry in the China business?
Okay. to my view, actually, we always know there are three modes, right? Franchising and the export and joint venture, FDI, right? There are three ways of entering for the for the companies. I think 20 years ago, they're still changing. 20 years ago, Chinese government are very cautious for the foreign investment. So I think joint venture is the main form taken by the American companies. And the investors are large multinational corporations. And but over the past 20 years saw the steady growth and benefits of the opening policy by the Chinese government. So not only the central government, but also the municipal government and the provincial government of across nation just compete in providing the favorite policies and to the foreign investors. So that attract now. Then I think that's the first stage. Then with the improving software and hardware of the investment for American companies, I think second stage we can see more franchising. For example, KFC, McDonald's, or Starbucks is franchising for. And I think now we are in the third stage. The stage more and more small and media companies come into China. At the same time, more and more Chinese companies are exploring the possibility of making direct investment in the United States. I mean, now more and more small companies, what we call it as born global. At the very beginning or very inception of their establishment, they began to target the market in China. So that's what I think. Thank you.
Well, that's the microphone. Right there, and then
I can speak to it. I can speak to it.
Well, we'll do this guy first, and then we'll do you. Go ahead.
From what I've heard, China's been interested in sort of moving away from the Chairman Mao period and has been sort of slowly going away from communism. Would you say that it's wanting to have talks with the United States and being included with H-Chin are signs of this?
Repeat the last part of your question.
Would you say that China's wanting to be included in the ASEAN group and also to talk with the United States in conjunction to sort of talk North Korea down are a sign of its trying to move away from communism?
So which one are you asking?
His question was, is China going to be part of ASEAN? That was his first question. And the second question, whether China would cooperate with the US in resolving the North Korean, the tension in the Korean Peninsula.
Okay, I think I can talk about the first part. The second part is more politically, right? Yeah, some other people would be more qualified. Yes, China was not one of the Asian nations. But China collaborates with Asian countries or nations, increasing the mutual dependency. And not only so, it also in one of the lines I showed just now, it invite Asian to add 3 more countries which are significant, right? China itself, Japan, we all know, South Korea, and so yeah, the answer to your question is yes. This is the direction they are taking. Then for your second part, anyone wanted to share? Ben, my brother Ben?
Well, it struck me a little bit that the presentation on Confucianism and what I know of Maoism had certain parallels. And so I'm not sure that I would see the idea of China helping resolve North Korea as being part of China moving away from communism, maybe for a different emphasis within the communism, more from Mao toward Confucius, but essentially keeping within its current track.
Thank you.
I'd like to get one more question in before we run out of time.
For Professor He. I have a question. The proponents of clean coal in the United States, the proponents of using coal for electrical production here, talk about a term called clean coal. And yet the skeptics say that to make clean coal is going to increase the cost to where it's not advantageous. How in China are the plans to go ahead and to have an environmentally efficient electrical production, again, without having the environmental costs exceed the cost of producing the electricity?
Okay, thank you very much. China is too huge. I think that the coal is the main power for energy now. I think that this is not only the present situation. In the next, I would say 30 years or 50 years, coal will be a major part of China. Now we have several different kinds of energy resources. Okay, now water is not enough. Okay, wind is not enough, and oil. It's very difficult for China to enlarge its oil import from outside world. Okay, solar energy. Yeah, I think that it's very costly, right? And the coal in China, because we have a large territory and we have a lot of reserves. Okay, so coal is a good thing. It's a cheaper thing for China to supply. Okay, but the cost will be higher and higher because a lot of accidents every year from coal mines. Okay, so the government say that we need to find some other resources like nuclear power. Okay, actually nuclear power is the target of China to develop. We know we have a lot of plants now in construction. You just now told about the clean coal, right? Yeah, in China, I think that we have the similar thing, but it's very expensive to them. Because for household, we use coal. In a lot of countryside, especially, they use that one. It will take years. For environment, coal is, I don't think, whether maybe you can have some very good technology and equipment for China to solve the environmental problems. Yeah.
May I add a few words? I think actually all Chinese people are really concerned about haze several months ago because it's winter. Chinese people, especially in winter, Chinese household and factories burn coal for heating system. I think that's the main reason for the haze 2 or 3 months ago, and it's concern only for the individuals, the household, also for the government at all levels. I think if people and the government have the consciousness of air pollution, I think we can find a way. For example, in my view, there are 2 ways. From the town I'm from Tianjin, if you go to the seashore, you can see many wind wheels for producing wind energy. And also government are making policies to encourage the households and a new build household to build energy efficient housing with innovative materials. And also, in the past, China's solar energy products exported to Germany. 90% of the solar energy equipment produced by Chinese factories exported to Germany. And I think in the future, the future here means the near future, maybe next over 5 years, the usage of the solar energy, solar panel, will be encouraged to installed on the roof of the newly established constructions. That's what my view. Thank you.
Unfortunately, the time is up, and I wanted to just thank the panel one more time for their time and their
I want to thank the panel one more time for their time and their thoughts. Thank you.